This is the time of the year when parents are leaving no stones unturned to admit their wards in the best possible schools. The criteria for admissions could be many, right from the reputation of the school to its popularity factor to its market value for some, and for some it could be the medium of instruction to the past results of the school. And for yet others, it could be a choice between co-ed schools and non-co-ed schools. So today we will be talking about the advantages and disadvantages, if any, of co-education. Welcome to Gender Discourse. I'm Lottie Alaric. To take this discussion forward, I have in the studio a distinguished panel of guests, and I'm very happy to welcome Mrs. S.L. Gupta, Director Education, the Khaitan School, Noida. I welcome you to the show, ma'am. Sitting next to her is Aditi Tandon, Special Correspondent of the Tribune. I welcome you too.
Hi.
So, Mrs. Gupta, let me just begin with you. As I said, this is the admission time and you must be inundated with calls and visits by parents, who must be wanting to admit their children. Now, before we actually go into the co-ed and, advantages and disadvantages, what is it that people or parents are today actually looking for in a school?
The most important thing that they look for is, A, it should be a composite school, that is from nursery to class 12, so that they are rest assured that for next few years they will be at comfortable levels. And B, they definitely look at the results of the school. No matter how much we talk about holistic development, but the results, the board results are very important for the school. And I'm very happy to note that of late, the parents have been giving enough importance to the fact about the activities conducted in the school, the sports activities and co-curricular activities. So these are the three major criteria. If the school is doing that, obviously it will have a name.
Yes.
So when it has a name, then there is a rat race for that particular school. And these are the three major criteria I feel that the school is, the parents look for. And affiliation and boards has become another question mark for the parents. Many of them are going for IB, many are going for IGCSE, but yet I'm very proud and very happy to note that still we have a very large number of parents preferring the CBSE board.
That's right.
Because of the way it's developing the curriculum every year, the way it's evolving with the global changes. I think that's the reason parents are quite happy with the CBSE board. At least I am, for one, very, very fond of the CBSE because of the evolvement that is taking place over there. So that's the reason I think because of the three criteria that I mentioned, you find at this time parents are really, really nervous about admission.
Absolutely. Aditi, over the years, particularly in a city like Delhi, we see, as she rightly said, there's a rat race among parents to put their wards in school A, B or C. Do you think that over the years, what has actually emerged is, the bigger the name, bigger the building, bigger the, the hoo-ha about a school and all that, that is somewhere that plays a major role for parents?
Yeah, I was listening to her and, remembering how we had a very tough time putting our nephew into school.
Yes.
Because every time you have this, nursery admission coming in, parents start, I think, almost a year in advance. And also, I think personally, when I interact with parents, a lot of them tell me that they also feel constrained about choices in the sense whether to put their wards into experimental schools.
Yes.
There's something called experimental education these days.
Yes.
And there's something called conventional education.
Correct.
So, there is a whole new brand of schools that has come up. For instance, we have Sanskriti, we have Shikshantar in Gurgaon.
Yes.
These are very unconventional forms of education. Children are not put into the very conventional forms of schooling, learning tools, teaching tools. And it's a very open atmosphere for students to actually find their talent, find their voice and grow and bloom really. It's just like home. Only thing is it's a little structured than home and allows you to grow. So I think parents, the first choice that they have to make is whether they want their wards to go to a conventional education system, which is the CBSE and the rest, or into an experiential, experimental form of education, which a lot of new schools are now offering, and a lot of modern parents, modern couples now want their children to go through that, because a lot of them want that tomorrow the children should go abroad for studies.
Right.
You know, for instance, Scandinavian countries, they are the best known in the world for their education systems. Finland is on the top of the list. And they're all, you know, very open education systems, no rote learning. Some schools don't even have syllabi, curricula for a very long time.
Right.
It's introduced at some levels only at grade 5. So, you know, our schools are catching up, but we have a long way to go.
We have a long way to go. We have a long way to go. And also the mindset of the parents is not really like that. Now, tell me, Mrs. Gupta, that when parents come to you, know, of course, the school has its own checklist and its own questionnaire and all that. But today's parents are very evolved. They might be coming with their own set of questions, you know, before they actually want to put their child into that school.
Definitely.
So, what is it that they are really looking for? Do you get any surprises?
Well, you know, even though you have these new branded schools, the 5-star schools and all that.
X factors.
Yes, all that is there. But I still find that very few parents are impressed with just the infrastructure of the school.
Okay, okay.
And they are very much into how old the faculty is, how experienced the faculty is, what is the training program of the faculty.
Right.
And as I just told you, that as far as activities, sports, all these are very important, and the facilities for these, you know, special coaches, expertise on these, and they do good survey and good homework before they choose the school. That is very good situation, you know, where parents are directly involved in the choosing of the schools. And fortunately, in NCR, especially in Noida and Gurgaon, there are quite a few good schools, and parents have ample time to conduct that survey. We, for fun in the Khaitan school, as I told you, we give a lot of importance to co-curricular activities. Sometimes some parents, as she just said about the conventional education, parents do find that there are too many activities and the tests and whatever are not so, it's not so rigorous as it is in other schools. But after a few years, they realize when the child becomes confident, you know, because right from nursery, our teachers start looking for the talent, the latent talent in the child. And it is we who advise during our review meets with the parents, we advise them as to this child can be good at this instrumental music, this child can be in this vocal music. And once they gain the expertise by 10th, parents are very thankful. So that individual attention, each child being unique, I think that is absolutely the forte of the Khaitan group and many other schools now. Many other schools.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so now Aditi, now let's now come to the topic of discussion of today, that is co-education. Of course, I'll ask Mrs. Gupta as to whether people are also looking for that kind of a thing also. But you know, over the years now, I really don't know whether there's any data to suggest whether we have more of co-education schools now than we had in the past, or parents are do they still have a question mark whether they want to send their child to an all-girls school or an all-boys school or into a co-ed school? Is there anything to suggest?
No, I think just by simple behavior and experience with parents and a lot of caregivers, one can easily say that a lot of people are now consciously going in for mixed schools.
Yes.
You know, gone are the times like our generation, for instance, was quite enamored of the convent education, and because the convents were, you know, structured in a certain way.
That's right.
So they were single sex schools, either boys or girls. So most of us have come through those systems because convents were the only good schools at that time.
Correct.
But as she very rightly pointed out, now we have a whole array of you know, wonderful schools coming up, a lot of people getting into education because education has been also opened up.
Yes.
You know, over the years we have to realize that the government has also done a fairly good job of kind of unshackling the education system, almost parallel to the unshackling of Indian economy came the unshackling of the Indian education system. So thankfully for our population we now have at least schools.
Yes.
Otherwise how many of us could afford to go to convents?
Correct.
And co-education, simply because it prepares you better for the world tomorrow. It you know, the collaboration that you have with the opposite sex in a classroom situation makes you a very confident person. tomorrow you are in a position to freely converse and exchange your ideas with the opposite sex. There are
because
studies,
as it is in your place of work, you cannot have a choice of working only with a single sex.
Absolutely.
Right.
And also, you know, mixed schools give the advantage of free exchange of ideas of both the sexes. See, women and men have very different solutions to the same problem.
Correct.
So just imagine a situation where there is an amalgamation of both the thoughts. So a beautiful solution can emerge, you know. So a lot of parents now look at that, as you very rightly said, that looking at workplaces tomorrow, which are all mixed workplaces.
Yes.
So you better prepare your child much in advance. So co-education is the thing to go for, really.
Right. So, Mrs. Gupta, would you say that these are the schools which reflect the diversity of our society, you know, when we talk of co-educational schools? And what do you, in your experience over the years, you've taught in many schools. So, do you see any difference among students of, say, a single-sex school and a co-ed school?
I have. 37 years I've been in this line, but to say the least, that I myself have studied in a co-education school.
Okay.
Way back in early 50s, my father decided to put me in a co-ed. And believe you me, the confidence that I have today and the way I conduct myself in school and outside, I think it's thanks to my school education more than my higher education.
Right.
And talking of today, of course, most of the schools, especially the ones that are coming up now, and even in 50s, if you talk of schools like DPS Mathura Road or Modern School Barakhamba or my school, the Air Force School Sabroto Park, they were all co-education schools. As ma'am rightly said, that earlier there used to be this mindset of, you know, my daughter goes to a convent missionary school and so on. But I think soon the society has realized that after all, what is an institution? It has to reflect the fabric of the society.
Absolutely.
And so the institution must have what is outside in the community. And that's the reason why most of the schools today, and I'm happy to say even the government has realized, because most of your Kendriya Vidyalayas are all co-education. You have some government schools, girls and boys. But I think very soon the government will also start opening schools that are co-education schools, because later in life, you have to make all kinds of adjustments if you've not been in a co-education school. Not only when you go to your place of work, but when you're in a university or when you're traveling, you're always mingling with the girls and the boys are mingling. And of course, it gives you a great sense of comfort, you know, when you're after schooling in co-ed, when you're outside. It's not a transition that's absolutely new and there is a new world waiting for you, nothing of that sort. It gives you a sense of comfort, and that's why I feel that co-education is absolutely necessary today.
I think that's
and
important.
It's a happy situation where our educationists are realizing that, and we are having most of the schools, private especially, are co-education schools, and they're doing wonders. They're doing wonders, really.
Absolutely. You're right that the private schools are mainly co-education schools, but then education people, we also have children in the, you know, say in the villages and in smaller towns. But what is actually happening there? Because we also see a lot of dropout rate in those schools. Now, what can that be attributed to? We are going to find out, but right after this very short first break. So when we come back, we are going to open our lines, and if you have anything to say regarding co-education, this is the forum. All you'll have to do is pick up your phone and reach us at 1800115314 and 23035420. So today we are talking about co-education, boon or bane. Welcome back. You are watching Gender Discourse, and today we are talking about co-education, boon or bane. Well, when we are talking about the advantages or disadvantages, if any, about co-education, we've got to have a psychologist on board. So I'm very happy to have with me Dr. Jayanti Datta, who's a psychologist. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much.
So, well, as we were talking about the scenario, and we just came to the conclusion that in the cities, these co-education schools are doing pretty well. But you tell me, Dr. Jayanti, when we go a little towards the suburbs or maybe the smaller towns and the villages, do you think co-education is really working there?
I guess so, because the kind of the hype about the gender discrimination and gender awareness, I don't think that exists really in this shade in the rural belt of India.
Right.
And I personally feel that, you know, if you don't make the children really aware, critically aware, they flow in their own normal pattern, and it's a very healthy kind of a scenario. When the children grow up together, they learn everything in their own way.
Correct.
Amazing, you know, we adults, we try to intervene in putting things into their cognition, which probably doesn't exist.
Right.
And if you allow them to have it in the normal flow, I think that's the healthiest way. You never had this kind of thing earlier, which is cropping up now. And of course, the scene is so bad in certain spheres of our society that Delhi police had to pitch in and introduce gender sensitization.
That's right, right.
I am actively involved with Delhi police for that, and more than 8,000 children I have interacted in various public schools and government schools, and to my amazement, the awareness is, you know, so strong. Even the 6th class child from a government school would get up and ask me, why are you not having us also in your you know, address? Like if I'm addressing only the boys, so I had to request the commissioner that please introduce a combined kind of a group.
Right.
And they lapped it up, you know, and they tease each other. I think that's a very healthy way. This scenario where because of some other dynamics, changes are there, you know, where you are more curious about the other gender, other sexes, you know, like girls are more keen to find out what the boys are talking about. And that, if you handle it in a sensible manner, that also gets taken care of. But if not, then of course it could be suicidal. I just learned today one of the boys have committed suicide in Mumbai, 12 years old. We don't know the dynamics, but the fact that he walked out from the tuition class and then went home, went to the terrace and jumped out of the terrace. Sometimes what happens, you know, you have misgivings, you have misconceptions. They are palmed out to the children, and unfortunately, in modern day world, you know, where especially both the parents are working, the child doesn't get a corner, child doesn't get a space, child doesn't get someone to listen to him, share his agonies and rectify them if the need be.
If the need be, right.
You know, so that's very unfortunate.
Okay, Aditi, you know, today we know that sometimes in these co-educational schools, we keep hearing all sorts of stories, and particularly from these big, you know, known public schools. Now, there is a school of thought that says because of the exposure to the social medium or to the, you know, when we talk about the internet and things like that, they have access to so many things. So when they're all together, they're also experimenting sometimes with things, with stuff which they shouldn't. So do you think this is one of the disadvantages of having a setup of a co-ed school, if not handled well?
Absolutely. See, as all the panelists are pointing out, that co-education is the healthiest way to go forward in life.
Correct.
Because, you know, it's the only way that the natural tendency between the sexes to compete with one another is allowed to play out in a very natural way. Because women and men are always trying to outdo each other, whatever the sphere of life. But the point that you are making about the way social media is exposing the current generations to a lot of new influences, of course there are experimentations, but there are experimentations in all forms of settings.
Right.
It is not as though only the big public schools, the 5-star schools that we often hear of, have children experimenting with new ideas or you know, whatever they have been experiencing, the feelings or relationships or whatever. People in rural areas, the smallest of schools also do that. So to put a blanket ban
of course,
on engagement,
that's not what I mean.
Exactly. You said if not handled
well.
So see, everything cannot be expected of the school or the school management. It's a team effort between the parents and the school administration. So, you know, the tendency these days I've seen among parents is to put the blame on the school administration.
Very easily, yes.
Generally, because simply because
passing
parents
the buck,
passing the buck.
Yes.
Parents don't have the time. They think since they're paying so much for the education, you know, I have a package deal, so you better take care of my child.
And you better be answerable for everything.
But you have to understand that culture is bred depending on situations and circumstances. In a school setting, a child can only pick up this much, but the gap and the void has to be then filled up by the parents as well. So
I'm
you
sorry,
very correctly
Lottie,
said,
I would like to differ.
You very correctly said that it has to be a balance of all caregivers at the school level and at the level of the family.
Yeah.
See, one of the very reputed public schools in Delhi last year, I think, if not mistaken, they had a bullying kind of a scenario.
Yes. And I think we all saw that.
Yes. Badly thrashed.
Yes.
Another very reputed school, again in the metropole, where the child was a student of 8th class and managed to pour petrol on himself and lighted fire. Now, these are 5-year-old child, or, you know, 6-year-old child in the school, renowned public school, Bangalore. If the child has been malhandled or abused by one of your workers, I would not want the blame not to be given onto
No, I think that's a different
my point is, my point is, if you are a reputed school and you are not wanting the blame to be given on you, you have to be pertinent enough and you have to be careful enough that your CCTV cameras are there in
and they're working
swimming
and somebody's
pools,
monitoring them.
even in the play fields.
Correct.
And your teachers are not only busy in the lunch time, you know, they have a right to have lunch, but then please distribute the time so that the children who are spending quality time in your reputed school, and when you send a child to a reputed school, you know, you have a desire. The parents I talk to, they feel, oh, my son is going to this school. We know children, you know, they feel that the children are taken good care of, which mostly they are.
Jayanti, I'll have to interrupt you for a moment. We have a viewer. This is Mr. J.N. Rao from Tamil Nadu. Mr. Rao, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Co-education is complete education and introduction to the society and community for the students of both the sexes, leading to that broad-minded thinking at a very young age and preparation for the morrow with the change of times and nature.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
This is the need of the hour.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, Mrs. Gupta, tell me, do you find any of these kind of challenges sometimes in the school, as we are talking of the exposure to the internet?
We are so alive to what is happening in the society, as ma'am just talked about CCTV cameras and very correctly about the swimming pool, the canteen, and certain dark areas where you have in the school. So we are very prompt in ensuring that all the areas are covered by CCTV. Not only that, that in the guard room also there is this TV where the guards can see what is happening. Yes, of course, we don't put CCTV cameras in classrooms. We don't believe in that. And that is infringing on the freedom of the teacher.
Of the teachers.
But we have, and we are so much so that the girls' toilets, they are taken care of by lady sweepresses.
Yes.
We've gone to that extent.
Correct.
And as she said very correctly, that during breaks and during other functions and all, teachers are all across in the corridors, everywhere they put on duty. So we have to be cautious. We also, if required at any time when we, you know, commit a lapse, we have to take the responsibility.
Correct.
Fortunately, because we are so conscious, touch wood, we haven't had to face such a thing. But these aberrations happen, as you were saying. Coming to ma'am's point of suicide, you know, I personally feel that there is more peer pressure and parental pressure that is causing this kind of you know, dismay, illusion in the minds of the children, that they are indulging in things like suicide. It is really not so much in schools now, because they become very aware and responsive to the fact that the society, as we just spoke of social media, that children are exposed to so much, and somewhere down the line we have to facilitate. We cannot give lectures, we can't give sermons anymore. We have to facilitate, we have to be mentors, we have to hold their hand and tell them what is right and what is wrong. I think if any school management, teachers and faculty are alive and proactive to these changing situations in society, fortunately things like this may not happen.
Right. Now, Aditi, talking of single-sex schools, you know, everybody here is saying that co-education is the best form of education and all that. But when you talk to students who have come out of these single-sex schools as well, I mean, they have very good things to say about their schools. It seems as if they haven't missed out on anything. And at the same time, today, when we talk of safety of the girl child, safety of women, do you think somewhere down the line, these schools, which are single-sex, which may say all-girls school, would be a better option than a co-ed school?
Well, as I earlier also argued that, you know, putting people in silos and then trying to achieve your own objectives, I mean, you have to make every space safe. That has to be the objective of any caregiver, whether it's the school administration or whether it's the government at a higher level. But as you said, single-sex schools, of course, as I said, I have come out of a single-sex school system.
And you seem completely normal to me.
I seem normal. But then I would like to also acknowledge that since I was not exposed to the other side, so I really can't say what I've missed. So I'm sure I've missed something.
Can
I
let it just finish?
Yeah.
Yes.
So what I'm trying to say is that every school system has its advantages and disadvantages. But of course, a co-educational school system prepares you better for the future, prepares you better to deal with the world outside, helps improve your confidence, helps improve your relations with the opposite sex.
That's
and
right.
also, I think at a very basic level, it helps to break stereotypes. I've seen when boys and girls study together, they tend to respect each other more than otherwise. That's my own experience.
Yes, Dr. Jayanti.
Yeah.
Now
I was trying to say that, you know, you cannot say that single-sex schools are better in this way. You cannot compare it, you know. They have their positive things, they have their negative things. But at the same time, we should not forget, in a family scenario, you cannot have only girls, only boys. You know, it's a mixed kind of a thing. So if you carry out the same dynamism to the and extend it to the school setup, I think that gives you a healthy, you know, growth, healthier growth, than you know, segregating. Like she said, I don't know what I missed out on the other. I would beg to differ. With 40 years of teaching in Delhi University, I would say I taught in a very reputed girls' college, and you know, I felt the children who were coming from the single-sex schools, they were more naughty. They were more indulgent.
They wanted to be more experimental.
Yes, and they would, you know, go and grab things where the other person, you know, who is from the co-education school, she would stand by and take cognizance of the whole thing and take a little time to decide. But here the bonding and the confidence, of course, would overpower anyone. So I think, you know, all the setups have their own positive.
Jayanti, I'll have to interrupt you. We have a viewer from Maharashtra. This is Umesh Joshi. Umesh ji, if you can hear me, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Yes, please go ahead.
I like to watch Lok Sabha as well as RSTV channels. See, the discussion that is going on, that is pertaining, is outcome of what our modern awareness of freedom for every person, a man or a woman, we have cultivated so far during last few 100 years or so. But what I think, the major task of every society is to develop a child for his own challenges in the life. So somewhere down the line, we have talked about freedom of a woman, freedom of a man, individual freedoms, then freedom of somebody else, freedom of this and that. And we have marginalized our duties towards our children. So somebody should have been there in the home to look after a child, because it is a very, very, very important, dedicated task as far as a nation building or society building is concerned. But no one has got that time, and by paying to the schools, we cannot expect the kind of culture that we expect from a child. Because a family itself is a center of
absolutely. The role of family cannot be denied. That is true. Umesh, I thank you so much for joining in. I wish we had more time to give you, but yes, I do get what you are saying. Would you like to respond to him?
Yes, if I am allowed. Definitely, as he said, the family. And today I feel the schools are working in partnership with the family. If they don't do that, they cannot be successful. We know that every little thing about a child, whether the child is absent for 3 days or whether the child has boarded the bus and not reached the school, immediately the teachers have been instructed to speak to the parents on that day to know exactly what has happened to the child.
Right. That's right.
So these kind of systems that we have on daily basis, and we have review meets, parents teachers meet, where we discuss the development of the child threadbare. Whether it is intermingling with the peers in the class, whether it is taking part in activities, whether it is being an introvert. So family and school have to work in partnership with each other. There has to be a good synergy between the two.
And very, very required.
We have another
But in
viewer.
some of
This
the
is
schools-
Sunil from Delhi. So Sunil, if you can hear me, welcome to the show.
Yeah, good evening, ma'am.
Good evening to you.
Yeah, it's me. Good evening, ma'am.
Yeah, good evening. Please go ahead, Sunil.
Ma'am, I want to say that co-ed is it is the high time to apply co-ed because it is not only necessary for the girls but for the boys also.
Absolutely.
As we can see, we can prevent children from co-ed, but when they go out for job, they have to work with women. When they marry with women, not with men. So
correct. Well, that could change,
is,
but yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But co-ed should be necessary because it abolishes the fear of boys and girls mostly.
Right.
So, especially for it should be for the lower level for the poor people also, because rich people can manage that, but poor people cannot manage that. If they are if they work, then there will be a problem for them.
I get your point, Sunil. I think you have a point there when you say that it's very important for the boys to mingle with the girls or for the men to mingle with the women to understand that gender and to respect it. I think that's a very good point that you've made. I'm going to get the responses of all my three panelists. But right now, we'll have to slip into a very short break. When we come back, you can call us again, and for the others, you can just keep trying. Our numbers are running on your screen, which are 1800115314 and 23035420. Today, we are talking about co-education, whether it's a boon or a bane. Tell us what you think. Welcome back. You're watching Gender Discourse, and today we are talking about co-education. Well, folks, you can still call us. Our lines are open, and the numbers are 1800115314 and 23035420. Aditi, I would want you to comment on what Sunil just said, from Delhi. And he said that not just for the girls, because as it is, girls are being given all kinds of instructions, whether they are in the family, grandparents, friends, teachers, whatever. But I think it's important for the boys to understand about the opposite sex. So I think he was very right when he said that it would be really important for boys to go and study in co-educational schools, because so that, as he said, we all have to grow with the opposite gender. So
yeah, absolutely. It's the same psychological argument that we've been trying to make from the start of the show, that it's very healthy for both the sexes to interact and interact right from the stage where it is possible. Like if it can happen from the nursery level, that's the best thing that can happen to both boys and girls, because interactions become healthier, gender stereotypes break, people start respecting each other. Earlier on, the influences that children are exposed to in childhood will shape them into better citizens, into better men and women, and ultimately into better, partners.
That's right.
Ultimately, it's about families. Both the sexes have to go on to make a good family and to become good professionals. So in both spheres of life, the best thing that can happen to both the sexes, in fact, I don't think it's a boy-girl issue. It's actually equally important for both of them.
It is, but what I'm saying is, and I'm sure Mrs. Gupta would agree, you know, the kind of crimes that one is seeing today, there have been crimes against women, and sometimes they are, these crimes are carried out by people who either have had no education, leave alone co-education and what have you. So what I'm saying is that if they get to interact with the opposite sex, they would understand that they're as normal as they themselves, and it would be a healthy growing, as everyone here has been talking about.
That's the reason, you know, that the entire concentration of having co-education schools only in the A category cities or metros, and not going down to the B category or even to some kind of rural areas.
Correct.
I think that is a big handicap, and that's the reason that you have these kind of social elements who don't understand the mindset of the girls, and they indulge in whatever antisocial activities possible. But I feel the way the society, in the Indian society, is evolving, and if the evolution gets a little more fast, we probably would see co-education schools even in these B-grade towns.
That's right.
And to some extent even in the rural areas. But there has to be a lot of preparation.
Absolutely.
On the part of the parents, a lot of counseling has to be done. A lot of advice has to be given as to how this actually results in a very healthy relationship. There's no curiosity, there's no inquisitiveness, there is no aloofness. It's so natural, the growth is so natural. That
how it is meant to be, actually.
How it is meant to be.
Correct.
How the nature, the society has created this, you know.
Absolutely.
And to put them apart, no matter, there must have been some good reasons taught by the educationists when we had boys' schools and girls' schools. But now is the time where we really need to have...
Because we have to understand also that societies evolve.
And you will not have these crimes. I can tell you, if you have these schools, even in the rural areas or in small towns, these crimes will definitely go down. That kind of curiosity will itself be addressed if they grow together.
I hope the Ministry of HR is actually watching this discussion. Well, we have Ravindra Kumar Tripathi now from UP. So, Mr. Tripathi, welcome to the show.
Yes, ma'am. This is very good discussion is going on about the co-education, boon or bane. Ma'am, I am belonging from same profession as a teacher.
Okay.
And what I think about the co-education, that sometimes, especially in case of boys, because as a male teacher, what I observe in the boys student, that boys student shows their bulliness and their complex nature among the student to prove himself as a strong and overpowered, himself overpowered. So how can we prevent all these things as a teacher?
You mean to say in a non-boys school? Is that what you're saying?
No, in co-education, we are just teaching in co-education, but sometimes what I find in our experience, that the boys, especially boys, they are feeling the superpowered.
Okay. All right. Well, fortunately, we have a psychologist on board. I'd like her to intervene now and her to reply. I think maybe he's talking about the rowdies sometimes there could be, or even otherwise boys who feel...
Not only that, you know, there is a pressure from the peer group.
And maybe also the kind of families that they are coming from, you know.
Male chauvinism is that he's talking
I think that's what he's
about.
Sometimes what happens is you are tuned to a different kind of a rearing and different kind of things you witness in the family. So you carry that thing and palm it out in the social scenario. So this, what he is raising, maybe if, I mean, I find him an observant teacher. And when you have observed this kind of thing, I'm sure you will find there are some boys who are indulging in this kind of behavior. Isolate them out, talk to them, find out what exactly is happening within their mental setup. Because once you open up and the child knows that you are there to listen to him, so you will see that there would be some other dynamics. I'm sure if you give him 1 or 2 hearings, by the 3rd hearing, you will find out that this is why he is doing what he is doing. You know, it is prompted because probably the child is coming from an oppressive environment.
Correct.
Or maybe he is coming from an environment where there isn't anybody to listen to him. So he wants to prove a point, maybe in a wrong way. And this is the real time when the teachers can play a great role.
That's right. And maybe also this child could be from a setup which is completely patriarchal, where the women are not really given the kind of respect that they deserve. So these kind of boys will think that this is what they can do even in their classrooms.
And very often, you know, once they learn that there is somebody who is keeping an eye and is open to me in a friendly manner, that helps the child. And in case you find no, he is tougher than that, you are not able to have a dialogue, please refer him out to a psychologist. Because this is not just the work of a counselor.
Correct.
You need to understand the behavioral dynamism behind. You know, all our behavior manifestations have some dynamics behind. If you have the knowledge of psychology, it helps.
True. Now, Aditi, you know, talking about all this and how to go about bringing up these children and everything that you have, I think somewhere down the line, maybe schools also have to learn about, you know, not branding the children. Sometimes boys and girls, if they are studying together, they will be together for a lot of things. I think when the branding starts happening, sometimes the teachers themselves indulge in that, you know, oh, so and so is your girlfriend, or so and so is your boyfriend. So kind of injecting those kind of things in their minds. We have to see that these things are normal, and to an extent they should be allowed. What would you say?
Yeah, absolutely, because in a classroom environment, intermingling, interactions are you know, part of the natural process of growth and of learning. I think the teachers these days, Lottie, are trained in a way as to understand interpersonal relations, as ma'am had earlier said in her intervention. That
no, what I mean is sometimes even, you know, by way of fun, you know, sometimes if so that branding starts to happen.
Yeah, because branding can be extremely dangerous, because you're putting the child in a spot, you're unnecessarily, you know, actually putting the arc lights on him in the class. So you're in a way psychologically literally isolating him.
Correct.
If you're branding.
Absolutely.
And that can have disastrous consequences in formative years of children. And in fact, children these days, because the levels of exposure are so huge, social media, you know, they are very conscious. I've seen even parents are unable to rebuke children these days. These are not the children that we were.
Correct.
You know, ours was a completely different generation. We were trained and we were kind of conditioned in a way as to listen to what the parents are saying. But these days I've seen parents making even the, you know, most harmless of interventions for their children on the face of their children. It will not be tolerated. So branding will be like a totally extreme step to do. And you're absolutely right that it is just not a done thing in a classroom situation. You have to ensure that everybody becomes a part of a whole. You know, every child is like a flower in a bouquet.
Never single out a child.
I'll come back to you, ladies. I have a viewer, Mr. Patil from Maharashtra, waiting for quite some time. So, Mr. Patil, welcome to the show.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening to you. Please lower down the volume of your TV set and just go ahead.
Ma'am, everybody talking about the boon of co-education, but no one yet talk about the bane of co-education. Please, for the sense of viewer, is any drawback of co-education? Please tell.
That question is for the viewers, you know, whether they think it is bane or, because we all think it's a boon actually. Yes.
No, there could be a couple of banes also.
Yeah, I think we have talked about those.
You know, taking this forward about branding, it's absolutely mandatory in the school that I am associated with that we will never single out a child. Be it whether the child has behavioral problems, the child is introvert, never answers in the class, or the child indulges in a bit of bullying. We never single out the child in the class scenario. The teacher is supposed to get in touch with the school counselor. This is all very confidential, and all the sessions that the teacher has with the counselor or with the child, they are kept confidential. We've seen very good results, and ma'am rightly said that in certain cases we definitely refer the child to a child psychiatrist. Earlier it was taken, oh, my child, what's wrong?
Stigma.
It is a great stigma.
Yes.
But now I am very happy to note that parents cooperate 100% with us, and then the child is taken to a child psychiatrist. We are sent the advice in the counseling of the child, and we absolutely go by that. So fortunately, our teachers are sensitive. They are sensitized also when they're training development programs. Never single out, as ma'am said, that even at home in the family scenario, you just can't raise your voice at a child today. Today's situation is very different.
Correct.
So it all, school teachers have to be friends, parents have to be friends. You see the results the children will open out with all kinds of problems.
Point of
and
warning.
nothing will be put under the carpet.
Point of warning, whosoever is watching this show of yours, that the children are bound to be different from each other. So for heaven's sake,
just like
don't
adults are
push
different.
the child for branding.
Yes.
Correct.
Don't try to say, yes,
You are
he's
this.
ADD, he's hyperactive, he's having bulimia, he's kleptomanic. Hold on. Don't use this DSM classification, etc. on the child.
Correct.
If you remember, Isaac was declared a slow learner. Imagine. So the initial phase of development, you might have various kind of manifestations. Give the child the breathing space, give him the opportunity and the chances that he is probably different from the other children.
Correct.
Handle him accordingly,
Hold his
and you
hand.
might see that the child really doesn't need to be branded.
Absolutely.
The child is absolutely normal. All he wanted was probably a little bit of pat, a little bit of
More
attention from the
yes.
teacher.
True.
That's
true,
it.
True.
More
So
attention.
final comments, Mrs. Gupta.
Well, finally, I would go, I think, with the entire panel here that we have, that co-education schools are very important, healthy, bringing out children who can adjust to the society, adjust to the university studies, workplace. They grow naturally. Society consists of men and women, so does the school. And for this healthy growth, understanding, etc., I would go all out for co-education schools and hope that the government takes positive steps in introducing such schools even in towns and to coming years in the rural areas as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Agree with you completely on that. Yes, Aditi.
Yeah, I agree with the panelists on this. And in fact, co-education was a concept that the Greek philosopher Plato introduced years ago. So we have to catch up really.
That's right. That's right. Yes, Dr. Jayanti.
Don't just make the child conscious of the gender. Let the child flow in his or her own way. And most of the government schools in Delhi, I think they have shifts, you know. Morning shift is for girls and then the afternoon shift is for boys. I would request all these policy makers to please come out with us on the road and see what happens. When the girls are coming out, all the boys are zooming past them, you know, with bikes and crowds and, you know, kind of hooliganism is there. They are trying to speak out something, get their message and introduce a combined kind of a, you know, co-educational setup so that this kind of hooliganism, which they display, they manifest.
And they don't have any more curiosity
Yes,
about them.
yes.
I think that's an important point.
No teasing.
Absolutely. So on that note, I'd like to say thank you to three of you for coming today and for talking about this issue with me and my viewers. So, well, friends, I think we've all come to the conclusion that co-education schools or colleges for that matter are a complete boon for society. But not to say that single-sex institutions are not doing well. Probably they are, and people have their reasons for putting their children into those institutions. But I think I would suggest that please see to it that your girls or boys, if they are in a single-sex institution, they do get to mingle with the opposite sex in some kind of extracurricular activities outside, because as one of the viewers also said, it's very important for the boys to learn about the girls and to know that they are as normal as the boys themselves, and they all need to grow healthily, because out there into the world we all have to coexist and we all have to work together. And the authorities that be and the ministries that are involved see to it, I think, and I'm sure this is not something, it's not rocket science really, that we must have co-educational institutions at every level, smallest towns, smallest villages, district level and what have you, and then we can say that we do have a safe India where we leave our children in the future. So thank you so much for joining in today. Catch us next week when we'll be taking up another sensitive gender issue. Till then, this is Lottie Alaric saying goodbye and take very good care of yourselves.